Man, Framewhisperer. Why do you hate Bryan? Is this a thing with him? Like people actually ask him, why do you hate Bryan? I'm expecting this video to be troll. I mean, he certainly loves to have fun. He's a funny guy. But he makes super thoughtful content. So I don't know. Does he actually hate Bryan? I would find that to be weird. I mean, I've made a video on the topic. He's one of the best character designs in Tekken, I would say, visuals and gameplay. He's so incredibly unique. But man, I mean, Framewhisperer, I watched a video of his a few days ago, and I just watched a movie, and I was like, he looks exactly like an actor I had in mind. But now I can't remember the actor. Whisperer is a good-looking chap, man. And there's a Hollywood actor that looks exactly like him. And I don't know, it's not Ryan Reynolds. No, there's an actor, well-known, that looks exactly like him. And a few days ago I had it, but now I've forgotten about it. No, it's not Eddie Murphy. It's, I had one.
Hello everybody. Today I want to tell you about one of my favorite YouTube videos of all time. I think seeing this video for the first time might have been the hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life. It's been
Wait, what did he say?
Of all time. I think seeing this video for the first time might have been the hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life. It's been a long time since I saw it now. It's like 8 or 9 years ago.
Is it
but
the video?
In it, there's this Swedish kid, and
is it when I'm praising what's his fucking name? Bryan.
This kid is so Swedish, by the way. He's got like the hair gel going with the spiky bangs. He's like 12 or 13. He's in a tight V-neck t-shirt from H&M. And he's just seen the latest Justin Bieber music video. And he's gone on like the family computer in the living room. And he's freaking out, talking about how much he hates Justin Bieber and Justin Bieber fans.
Justin Bieber is a totally extremely fuckface.
This video hits me.
Do you know what that's based on? The guys that hate Justin Bieber. Do you know why this happened many years ago? But you'd see a lot of guys go on the net saying, I hate Justin Bieber, I hate Justin... Do you know why they do that? It's because Justin Bieber gets all of a pussy. All of the girls worshipped, and probably still worship Justin Bieber. And this can lead to beta cucks getting super angry and taking out their frustration on the net and becoming haters of Justin Bieber, even though they don't consume the product, you know, the music and all of that. You can actually read up on this. This is 100% what is going on. They are super envious of Justin Bieber having all of the girls just, you know, fainting at his presence. That's actually what motivates it.
On so many levels. First of all, the Swedish accent is amazing. The Swinglish is like, mwah, it's 10 out of 10. He's talking about how he's gonna get the knife and stab you in the ass and pussy, motherfuckers.
Jesus. Sounds fucking psychotic.
Goddamn, that brought back early 2010 memories. I'm dying. TMM lol, TMM lol.
Do you have the text to speech when we're listening to a psychosexual sadist?
Go to your house and fucking kill you in your ass with a fucking sword.
And as the video goes on, he gets like more and more agitated, and at some point he goes to the kitchen and gets like his mom's bread knife, and he's talking about how he's gonna stab Justin Bieber in the dick with it.
Fuck.
I think another
of
reason
course.
this
He's envious of Justin Bieber's shiny 5-meter schlong that all of the girls are fighting over. It's, of course.
video really made me laugh is I feel like I understand where the kid is coming from. I feel like I know what he's going through, and I would like to find him and, you know, get him to put the knife down and explain to him that he probably doesn't actually hate Justin Bieber, which might blow his mind, but it's true if you think about it. There are many musical artists out there that you don't enjoy and that you don't listen to, but the fact that they exist doesn't upset you. What drives a kid like this nuts, I think, is when something exists that you don't see the appeal of, but everybody else around you is obsessing about it. Especially if you're like a shitty Swedish kid, you go to school, all the girls hit puberty like a year before you, that they're taller than you now, they're not giving you any attention, and you're being asked to compete with a kid who is like 5 years older than you and a multi-millionaire superstar with the voice of an angel, and you're just this Swedish kid. You're probably not even that good at Counter-Strike 6.0 or Global Offensive.
You're probably
So
not
what are
even
you
good
gonna
at
do?
Counter-Strike.
You turn on the
Oh,
radio,
God.
you're playing the songs. People are putting...
That was actually a thing in Sweden, 20 years ago when everyone was into Counter-Strike 1.6. Everyone played the game, and if you weren't even good at Counter-Strike, why don't you just kill yourself? That was basically high school conversations.
Posters on their walls, and then somebody sends you the latest video, you watch it, and I think that's when you have a breakdown and you go on, you know, your dad's computer and you make a video like this. The reason I'm talking about this is that's the exact relationship I have with the character that is on the screen right now. The longest running gag on my channel basically is the fact that I make fun of Bryan and I make fun of Bryan players. And for the longest time, people have been asking me to make a video about why I don't like Bryan. And the reason I haven't done that is...
It's easy to get annoyed at Bryan if you're very invested in Tekken and its community, I think, because he's always hailed as this 200 IQ galaxy brain character. And I know a lot of people don't like hearing that. It's like when I say that Kazuya is a difficult character and a lot of people get like, you just spam hell sweeps, and they don't understand. Or you do understand what makes Bryan and Kazuya difficult, but you still get annoyed at the praise people get. I think, like, especially with Bryan, people like to praise the players who play him, but I think a lot of people might get annoyed at that.
I don't want to sit...
And people go, what about me? I play Leroy. You know, I'm smart. I can do stuff. You know, they go, what's his name in The Godfather? Gispecci. What's his name? The useless brother. God, what? Fredo! It's Fredo! How do I forget this? That's Leroy players. But I'm smart! I can handle things! No, you can't.
Sit here and go, stop it, stop liking the things I don't like, because if I do that, I know what that turns me into.
You're fucking dead, bitch! You're totally fuckface!
So in this video, I will be talking about why I don't like Bryan. I just want to...
Can you imagine being a dad and your son recording a video like that? Oh, God.
To let you know, first of all, that I'm going to try and do it with a sense of self-awareness. In my defense, though, there is a defining difference between Bryan and Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber has some straight bangers out there. There is no intrinsic quality whatsoever to the character design of Bryan. This is pretty much the worst character design in the history of all video games. It's an extremely basic character that appeals to and is played and enjoyed exclusively by stupid fucking idiots who hate themselves and others and who suck at the game and at life in general. But before I get into why this move list is so
we talking about Bryan.
basic and dumb,
God, he's trolling so
let's
hard.
talk about a couple of the other reasons why this character seems to be designed to drive specifically me insane. A couple of... it's like a...
Bryan is played by uber tryhard sweatlords. I mean, people like me. I love technical characters. Any game I play, I try to find a technical character. It's like when I play Dota, I go with Kunkka. It's not like he's Meepo or Invoker, but it's still, as a beginner, I just can't start with Juggernaut or Sven. I just want someone that's technical. Not saying that Sven is super easy. Yeah, no, Sweatlords play Bryan. They really appreciate a challenge. They want to play the hardest character, and they certainly love it when people whack them off saying like, oh my god, you're so good with Bryan. Oh my god, you can taunt? You did a taunt upper? And they come. That's the type of person.
Now, many months ago, I had a day where just every single opponent I played against online was like a really high level, really compact Bryan player. And I'm not trying to say that you have to be high level in order to be successful with this character.
You certainly have to be. It's like it's like with Lee, the amount of difference you see between an intermediate Bryan. You can look at it like this. It's like a famous example JDCR gave when he talked about Tekken 6 Bruce. I've mentioned this before. Bruce was so easy, so strong, so effective with little work that he said that there really isn't a big difference between an intermediate Bruce player and a high-level Bruce player, because the character just works himself so much by his own. You know, he's just such a carry character. And I think you can say that about like Leroy in Tekken 7 right now, that mid-level Leroy, intermediate, and a high-level Leroy, probably not an astronomical difference. But if you look at a character like Bryan, the difference is monumental. Playing an intermediate Bryan and a high-level Bryan, or a competitive Bryan. It's like, it's a completely different character. You can't even compare the two. The intermediate Bryan, you're often safe just holding back, right? And he might try a lot of hatchets. That's usually how they play. But when you play against a god-level Bryan, like a 10 out of 10, or like a Lee, the character completely changes. And you're never really safe, because he will do a 28-frame unblockable that you can't react to that will launch you. I play against such Bryan players, and it's hell. Or their timing with his keep out, like his 3-4, when to do orbitals, Magic 4, it's like you can't compare it.
But it was just one of those days, and I was sitting around thinking about how much I hate Bryan, and just then, the main man all of a sudden uploads a video called something like, "Why Bryan Fury is the great..."
Fuck you! I thought it was safe. After the intro, when he was like, "Oh, this Swedish loser, fuckface, fuckboy," and I was like, okay, he's gonna mention my video on Bryan where I whack off Bryan. And then it didn't happen. We got that Justin Bieber hater, and of course, we made it. How far did we make it? 4 minutes and 44 seconds.
Greatest design in the history of fighting games, or something like that, and it felt like a personal attack. But it gets even better.
Off. He's just
Last
trolling.
night, I'm sitting around thinking about, you know, maybe I should finally record that salty-ass Bryan video about why I don't like him. And as I'm sitting around thinking about doing that, the Blasted Salami uploads that new, long, beautiful overview video about all the characters in the game. And because I'm that salty, I skip to the Bryan section, and they give him a 5 out of 5 for difficulty.
Of course!
Which, I mean, I happen to believe that this is probably the most easy to win with an easy-to-use character in the game.
Okay, he's just trolling, and now he's going to explain, do Snake Edge, do Hatchet, do Orbital. Okay, that's my guess. This is going to be his 30-second guide to Bryan. Spam Orbital, Hatchet. I mean, if he mentions Snake Edge, it's a dead giveaway, but this is just the biggest fucking troll. But Orbital, Hatchet... What else is he gonna mention?
So I'm thinking like, okay, if Bryan is 5 stars, what about an actually difficult character that I like? If he's a 5, then Elisa is at least an 80, right? So I go to the Elisa part of the video, and they've given her a 4 out of 5. So Arya, I can't believe that you did that to me, and we're gonna talk about that very soon. I'm gonna let you know what I think.
Yeah, Elisa is really difficult. Like, he certainly has a point here. But is Elisa more difficult than Bryan? No. And certainly not, like, if you're talking intermediate level. Like, Jesus Christ. Elisa blows everyone up. Little effort.
But, you know, it was a great video. Congratulations on it. Looks amazing.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
entertaining.
10 out of 10 video.
And he's also one of the most popular characters in the world. I think in Asia he might be #1. I know that he was back in the arcade days. For a fact, I saw statistics that show that if he's not #1 now, he's definitely in the top 3 all these years later.
He's
on
exactly
PC and
top
PlayStation.
3
So
globally.
if you're like me and you hate playing against Bryan, tough shit. It's going to make up a large chunk of all the Tekken you ever get to play, which is, of course, going to impact your experience with this franchise as a whole. Well, let's talk a bit about this.
Of course, you're gonna run into Bryan all the time. Oh, and here's a quick tip. Go into practice mode, lab the snake edge. Recognize that animation. Boom! You're gonna beat, what? 50% of Bryan players online. And another tip, really quickly, get into his face and jab check like this. Like this. You see what I'm doing? Keep doing this motion in his face. And again, 50% of Bryan players go, Why? Because this beats the orbital that we just like to throw as a panic move. And then Bryan has a lack of high evasive attacks. He can try to do down back 3, but that's not scary. Uncounter it. If he snake edges for a high evasion, you have time to recover from the jab and block and kill him. So this is my advice. Oh, and his panic moves are bad. He lacks decent poking. So just go like this in their face and you'll be... I showed this in my Kazuya coaching video, right? From not long ago. It's like it's a pretty high rank Bryan. He's like Suzaku or something. And I go like this. And he doesn't know what to do. So it's not as difficult as you think. I think just a lot of people overthink the Bryan matchup.
Extremely dumb and overpowered move list. We can actually use that video that Arya made as a jumping off point, because in it they give like a couple of words that describe the play style, the specialty of a character, and Bryan is described as a lockdown character, which I actually think is a pretty good description, because he's very good at just constantly resetting himself to advantage and never letting the opponent take a turn, as he's also walking you into corners just with insane pressure. But he also shuts down your ability to move away and escape that pressure using movement, which is the way you would typically fight against a character that is rushing you down and specializes in rush down. But what's interesting about describing this character as a lockdown character is I think there's another word you can use to describe that. If your character specializes in never letting the opponent take a turn and always being at advantage, in this game that's called winning. And I think if your playstyle and the thing that you specialize in deeply is winning, then it's a pretty good character, and I think the designers might have to go back.
That's called winning. Yeah. That's called winning. The problem with Bryan's pressure is that his, that quick poking that Kazumi can do, like jab down forward 1, down back 4. Bryan doesn't really have that. Bryan has pretty cool pressure, but again, back 1 is a slow attack. Hatchet, even though it's really good, it's kind of slow to come out. If he executes it perfectly, how fast is a hatchet? Like 23 frames? 24? And he has no high evasion while he's doing that. Right? He keeps his back upright the entire time. And that's kind of always Bryan's problem, that you see it as crazy pressure, but a lot of it is kind of fake pressure that relies on you just being very afraid of him. And he has a lot of Julia-style stuff where it's like, is he going to add a second hit or not? Down for 2, free, delay. Back 3, 1+2. It's like, there's a lot of fake pressure. And again... Oh, Jesus, Sammy. Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for helping the channel. And Rymos, big thanks to you as well. 9 months. We had a Twitter baby. Thank you. So, thank you so much, Sammy. Bless your heart, sir. So, yeah, it's like... If you want to compare the pressure of Bryan to, let's say, Leroy has pretty much everything Bryan has, and then some, and then Hwoarang's down 3-4. You can't see my leg, but I'm doing a low kick. Oh God, my camera. It couldn't take my pressure. So that's like, plus... What is it? Like plus 15, 16 into pressure? It's like, it's not even comparable. And again, like Bryan's pressure, he has no throw game. He has default throws and then 1+2 throws. Now compare his pressure to a character like Paul. I mean, come on, man.
Board. Let's talk about a couple of the...
But I'm overthinking this so much. I'm giving, like, legit responses to someone who's fucking trolling. I know he's trolling.
Big offenders. The hatchet kick, I think,
Thank you,
probably
Goat.
the best low in the entire game by a margin. If I had to describe what this move does for you, it's basically...
That move is super good, and it is over buffed, for sure. But best low in the game? I mean, Devil Jin Hell Sweep immediately comes to mind. Akuma down 3. I mean, that move is 100% busted. It's 19 frames, not 24. No, it's not. You're not including the input of the attack. The animation is 19 frames, but you have to do core circle back 3.
Teleport across the entire screen, get a giant chunk of advantage, deal a lot of damage, and go...
That's like saying an electric is 11 frames. It's not. The animation is 11 frames, but you have to input the attack as well.
Into a position where you will apply an inescapable vortex of constant plus frames until you inevitably win the round. So if that sounds like a pretty good move, guess what it is. It also has counter hit properties and you get guaranteed stuff on the ground, so there you go. Back one is another great example. Both of these moves can, like, theoretically be walked around, and, you know, I do it sometimes. Everybody does it sometimes, but it's one of those things where it's not a consistent enough strategy to counter these moves.
Yeah, and it's not really... Hey! Zaylor, thanks for the sub. And it's not really advised to ever try to, like, sidewalk Bryan because of his super strong homing attacks. He has so much homing and they hurt so much. So what you do is actually you just try to block. And it used to be that the hatchet was weaker, so you actually didn't have much of a 50-50. You'd rather take a couple of hatches than try to sidestep or ever duck Bryan. But they've buffed the hatchet too much. This has led to him actually having a legit 50-50. So the character is easier these days. He used to be, like, astronomically difficult, like easily top 1 difficulty. But these days, I'm like, probably Heihachi Kazuya are harder than him.
That you can really rely on it to survive.
My opinion,
in a
though.
Situation where you might be successfully, you would have successfully dealt with one of these moves. He could just do the thing that kills you.
Shanzo, nice to see you, sir.
But I think if I had to, like, remove or change one thing about this character when it comes to this pressure, honestly, the move that I hate the most, that I have the biggest problem with, is this 1+2. And the reason for that is, like I said earlier, when you're playing against a rushdown in this game, if you're playing against, you know, something like a Law, someone who's just pounding you with pressure, there are usually openings for you to slip under or out to the side. Or
Shanzo is not following main man.
Zafina Scarecrow mix-up or dive kick pressure from Elisa, you can backdash out. The fact that Bryan can go to
you
this,
just broke my heart.
right here,
you fucking
safe
pig.
on block homing. It doesn't have, like, a lot of damage unless you do the extensions, which exist and are pretty good, honestly, because
Can someone ban that
but it's just that
motherfucker?
thing where, okay, he does this, you block it, he has plus frames, you try and move, and he locks you down. He does this, he gets plus frames, so you can't do anything but try and move, maybe, and he locks you down. Pretty much all of, and this is the other, apart from the pressure, the other big thing that really drives me crazy about this character is I think he might be the safest character in the entire game. I feel like he...
yeah, he's super safe. And I actually counted his amount of launcher. There's this joke among top players that, like, doesn't matter what button you press, every button is a launcher on Bryan. Everything is a launcher. I counted this like a few weeks ago. He has 28 launchers. If you count them all, like the normal hit launchers, natural launch, and the counter hit launchers. 28 launchers. And they are among the best launchers in the game. And I looked at Paul as well, and it's a bit similar with Paul. You know, they both have godlike keep out. Absolutely godlike. You know, with Bryan, it's 3+4. It's orbital, magic 4, and with Paul, only down for 2 really has to be mentioned here. And he can do core circle back 4 and many other moves. But Paul also, like, so many buttons that launch. and so safe. They both have like these amazing counter hit launchers that are safe. But I feel like the designers were like, okay, so the drawback to Bryan and Paul is that they don't really poke as well as the majority of the cast. You know, Bryan doesn't have a down forward 1. And Bryan is so unorthodox. It's one of the best things about him. He doesn't have a hop kick. He doesn't have a down forward 2, right? He doesn't have a down forward 1. He has his own unique stuff. And Paul has a down forward 2. Paul has a hop kick. But again, Paul's down forward 1 is 14 frames and is going to rely on you doing sways. And again, like Bryan doesn't have, you know, the generic down forward 1. So it's like, that's the trade-off, even if it's more extreme with Bryan than it is with Paul. Paul also gets less effective with range. Like if people just back away a little bit, he's much less effective. But with Bryan, his hatchet reaches so far, and he has so many attacks that reach so far. So it's very interesting dynamics. And again, Bryan does have, you know, some of the best homing. Paul also has extreme homing. Like the space control on both of them is they're quite similar in many ways, Paul and Bryan.
Exposes himself to tiny amounts of risk, basically no risk at all. I think the only opportunities really to hurt or like deal damage to Bryan is you pretty much have to low parry him, right? You have to low parry a hatchet kick, or you have to low parry a down jab, and he loves his down jab. It's really good for him because moves like orbital, they're not punishable. Excuse me, they just give you disadvantage. So when you're at that disadvantage, you go straight into a down jab, and your opponent...
If you notice anyone doing that type of flowchart, and it's very common in beginner and intermediate, hop kick them immediately. Like orbital on block, do a hop kick, do your orbital, do whatever jumping attack you have that's going to launch them, do it immediately. Or if you're playing Kazuya and you do not have that, low parry.
Tries to take their turn, and then, you know, maybe you do a northern cross, and you blow them up for doing that. Counter hits are amazing. Your while standing stuff, this is 12 frames to impact, which is why they always wake up with it, and it blows you up when you try to apply Oki. I mean, just a nightmare.
Or sidestep the duck jab. We want to keep it as simple as possible, right? I'm probably going to upload this to YouTube, so I just want to give strats that everyone understands. And everyone knows how to do a hop kick, and hopefully most people know to press down forward to do a low parry. As soon as you say, oh, sidestep after blocking that attack, suddenly you're more towards higher level play. Because all block stuns are different. Requires experience to block a move and then sidestep immediately afterwards.
But the safety is insane, and the keep out is insane, mainly because of this move right here. One of the candidates I've mentioned before, I think this might be one of the best moves in the game. It's like up there. And the reason Lily was like catapulted into the stratosphere in terms of strength recently is they basically gave her a version of this move. So you're dealing with something completely safe that cannot really be dealt with in a lot of ways because of the amount of pushback that it has, right? You can use it from an extreme range, and it's very difficult to deal with. I've seen it punished like a couple of times in my life. It doesn't really happen, but when you get...
Certain characters really fuck him up. It's like Armor King, and Armor King's very popular, so those of you who play Armor King, if you find Bryan's 3+4 annoying, if you ever block that or on whiff, is your huge shoulder, the train, forward 1-4, will clip that every single time. Like, Bryan against an Armor King who knows what he's doing, it's like, he shuts down a ton of your stuff. And, you know, an Armor King's backswing blow.
Get that counter hit, it's going to blow the opponent up for all that damage, and it's crazy. Doesn't help that he sounds like a dumb bitch. Doesn't help that he has the original Snake Edge that the move category I hate is named after. It's just like...
Yeah, it's the original.
Like, he's like a genetically modified monster just to make me crazy. But the final thing I want to say about Bryan, now that we're talking about him, and I'm getting this stuff out of my system, is that I think the reason people talk about Bryan as being an advanced character, and he isn't, he definitely isn't.
He
Is the
definitely
fact
is.
that you have the taunt jet upper, and the taunt jet upper is an extremely difficult technique to pull off. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is extremely difficult to do. Thing is, right, it's difficult enough to do that it's not a viable strategy in a competitive game, and if you attempt it over and over, you might eventually get one. And you can put that in a clip, and you can send it to a clip channel or upload it to your own and go, look, I did a taunt jet upper in a match, and it's going to feel really cool and good. But I think there should be a law that says if you want to upload a clip of you getting taunt jet upper, you have to upload all of the attempts that failed before you got it. Basically, my point is that it gets to a point where this technique is difficult enough that you shouldn't do it. And turns out that Bryan players actually don't. If you go and play a bunch of games against even really good Bryan players today, if they're 2 rounds up and they're about to just like completely annihilate you, they might attempt it for a goof, but for the most part, people just do not do taunt jet up.
So this goes back to what I was saying at the start. The astronomical difference between your average Bryan that you encounter online and the 10 out of 10 Bryans. And I play against a couple of like 10 out of 10 Bryans. And to them, they land taunt jet upper like 90% of the time. Certain times I play them, they never fail a taunt jet upper. And this is where the character, and if you watch, for example, Low High play Bryan, he has videos where he does taunt jet upper 20 times in a row. He never fails it. It's there every time. With Knee, it's there every time. With Mr. Naps Jimmy, it's there every time. And you have a couple of Bryans in EU, and you have a Bryan player in the Philippines, VKV, 100% every time taunt jet upper. When someone plays that kind of Bryan, the character completely changes. And the character is suddenly almost OP, because he has a 28 frame unblockable launcher that they will use in certain setups at the wall, but also in the neutral. They will be very clever in setting you up in a very specific wake-up situation where you will mash tech roll, and then they dash into your face, taunt jet upper, and you're basically dead. The round is over. It's a completely different beast. Like the God Bryan player and the intermediate Bryan. There's no comparison whatsoever. And I do want to stress that I know a lot of people hate Bryan, and it's because you encounter him all the time. That's why a lot of people hate Kazuya. I just know it. Kazuya gets a lot of flack, and I know. It's because he's the second most popular. Bryan is the third most popular. So you just have an emotional connection to the character. You encounter him so often, and you lose, and you win some, but you see him so much that you get annoyed. It's just a character you see all the time. That's why you get annoyed. There's an emotional bias towards him. But make no mistake, he's super difficult. If you just hold back or jab a lot, most Bryans don't know what to do. And just saying that 3+4, this is the best button in the game. Yeah, but the thing is, to use 3+4 effectively, you know, again, in high level, you need an insane amount of understanding of spacing, movement, and your timing. Like the character is basically based around timing, like when to press a button and beat you out, because his basic poking is kind of weak. And it's like also, I think someone, oh god, I jump scared myself. It's like someone said on one of my videos, Main man thinks Bryan is high execution because you press quarter circle back 3 to do hatchet. That's super easy. And it's almost like they think that the only quarter circle input Bryan has is his hatchet. And yet again, I can stress about, well, yeah, doing perfectly timed hatches over and over, that's a little bit more difficult than doing Leroy's Hell Sweep or down 3-2 with Leroy. So there is more to it than you think, right? Waiting for it to recover, doing another one. But it's like it's quarter circle forwards. Yeah, while standing 1. Quarter circle forward, 3-4. Orbital, sidestep right, quarter circle forward, 3-4. Oh, magic 4, quarter circle back 2-4 immediately. There's much more to his technicality than you think. Like, But the problem is you have to play this character to understand what makes him difficult. And I feel a lot of people don't. There's certainly more to his technicality than just spamming hatchets or doing taunts. And again, like, the taunt is insanely hard. It's like one of the hardest things in this game to use properly. Not only, I mean, you think it's only the execution of taunt jet upper that's difficult. What about the application, setting it up again in Oki situations and at the wall? I feel like a lot of people just miss a lot of the nuances with the character.
It's just not really viable. And so, point being, if this technique isn't something you ever do in order to be successful with the character, does it matter? Does it count towards the execution difficulty of the character? If you're thinking about it in like terms of the potential of what you could do if you could execute perfectly, then yes, I guess it is difficult because of the taunt jet upper. But everything else is literally press win buttons. Just press win buttons. Never, you know, have any, never be punishable, never be unsafe, never even be at disadvantage. Go ka, bully your opponent into the corner, and win infinitely and forever. It's basically the character design, as far as I'm concerned, and I know so few people agree with me, but you know, maybe that's fine.
Oh, come on, I think a lot of people agree with you. It's, again, as I said before, Bryan is very common, there's an emotional bias. People hear that he's one of the most difficult, but that's not what you feel, you experience. They just spam stuff and you probably fall for orbitals constantly and you're like, oh, it's super brain dead. But it's like, again, just keep a simple few things in mind when you play against Bryan and you beat the majority of Bryan players. Again, lab the snake edge. Make sure you block that. Play on 5 bars, or at the very least a 4 bar. Jab check him and most Bryans fall apart. And again, I also want to stress this. He has like the best keep out in the game. Again, Framewhisperer mentioned this with the 3-4. So don't press buttons needlessly, right? Try blocking, and then he'll eventually come into your face, literally. And that's where you try to find your opportunity, right? And again, if you just do a stand block, it's just not that scary, in my opinion. It's not like Paul. Paul is really scary in your face with that throw game, for example, or his lows. I
mean,
yeah.
the amount of comments I get from like even friends, people I love, who say like my characters are for bitches and really dumb and overpowered and whatever, you know. It's just part, I think, of playing these games. And
oh, Jakey, thanks for the gift sub.
Jakey Pierce gifted a tier 1 sub to Ilya Kreb. They have given 45 gift subs in the channel.
Framewhisperer is an amazing dude. I've had the opportunity to voice chat with him a few times. He's a super nice guy and super thoughtful. And that's why, you know, we can agree to disagree. One day I just want to, hopefully he comes to Sweden. He's from Sweden, living in Japan. Hopefully he comes to Sweden, you know, and I can grab a beer with him and we can just shit talk or talk about Tekken, you know, and agree to disagree. You know, Jesus. I mean, I hate this internet culture thing of, if someone disagrees with you, I hate you. How dumb are you? Are you a grown-up? No, you're a fucking 11-year-old.
About them. So there you have it. Just a couple of words on Bryan. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Upload all of the...
Yeah, but good shit. I mean, obviously, I disagree with everything he said. And, you know, he watched my video where I praise Bryan, obviously, as one of the greatest designs ever in a fighting game. And I kind of stand by that. And I can just mention again, I talk about this in the video. It's how I introduced Bryan. This beautiful contrast in his visual design and in his gameplay. And his visual design is this crazy brute that doesn't even talk. He just goes, you know, he's crazy. He just hits stuff, overly aggressive. He's a dumb brute. Get some. But then when you look at it, you contrast that with his gameplay, and you have this, honestly, galaxy brain, lab coat, physicist. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's like, they couldn't be more diametrically opposed to each other, in my opinion. His visuals, and then the way he's played, and just how unorthodox he is, and how, no matter what, Bryan always does his own thing. Oh, you have a down for one that's 13 frames and -1 on block? Well, I have a 15 frame machine gun punch that is fully delayable, right? Where again, an intermediate Bryan might just throw that out, but to a top tier Bryan, that down for one is, I don't know how many mind games that has built into itself, just that one move. Down for one. It's yeah. And again, it's down for two. I could talk about the character forever, but Bryan is one of the great reasons to play Tekken, in my opinion. And Kazuya. Again, Kazuya does his own thing. The most bare-bone Tekken, again, doesn't have a down for one, doesn't have a hop kick, doesn't have a down for two. It's like, they really do their own thing, Bryan and Kazuya. And they have very defined strengths and very defined weaknesses, which to me makes them that much more interesting. I'd much rather have these types of characters than more of these super all-round Lydia, Leroy, fucking Ram, Leo, you know, the new modern direction of Tekken. These characters are to be cherished because you'll never see anything like it again. Bryan and Kazuya are from way back in the day where they made really weird characters. You know, it's like Steve in Tekken 4. It's like, what the fuck? You only punch? You sway with the kick buttons? And Marduk, again, a character that annoys a lot of people, but doesn't have the basic tools. Doesn't have down for two, doesn't have down for one. Relies on tackle and mounts and Oki setups, and it's like, you don't see that shit anymore. In Tekken 8, yeah, okay, those of you who hate Bryan, yeah, of course you're not gonna get another Bryan, so don't worry. You're gonna get another Leroy or Lydia or fucking Ram. So yeah, no need to worry. But yeah, good shit. Great video, and it's very funny. And I know he's trying to annoy us Bryan lovers. What a douche. But great video.